Bonjour everyone, Pantoufleee here today for a new video in which we have the pleasure of talking about the Vk-91p that just came back in the shop in a direct bundle. 22.5 thousand gold for that tank. It's quite a lot, so let's see if it's worth it. First of all, what is the Vk-91p? A little bit of context here. It was the tank that was available for the Christmas event 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And at first, when Wargaming introduced it, they just told us that it was a better Vk-7201k and probably a better E100 as well. And to be honest with you, they were totally right. Even if unlike the E100 here, you don't have 640 alpha damage, but rather 460, the fact that you reload faster makes it having a good DPM. Not obviously better than the one you will find on the Chieftain MK6 or something like that, but still a sustainable one that will allow you to fight quite fairly. And another impressive thing about the tank is probably its penetration with its regular shell, because as you can see, you have 275mm, which is enough to go through the E100 when not angled, the front of the turret. And well, thanks to this, you will probably not bounce many things in this game. Of course, here we are talking about the super heavy German tank, and by its name, super heavy, you understand already that it doesn't have the best mobility ever. And this one is no exception to the super heavy German tanks, because you can go to maximum 30 kilometers per hour. Usually you will go around 26, 27, which is not necessarily enough to take advanced position or aggressive ones. But that's good, because with this tank, you are not supposed to do this. You are supposed to brawl. You are supposed to get directly into the battlefield. And to do that, you have an impressive armor that will help you. As you can see, the Vk-91p is a pile of armor mounted on the pile of armor, because the only way for you to penetrate its turret frontally is to be able to shoot a specific shot straight to the middle of the turret. Otherwise, it will just be a bounce. And this gives it a huge advantage in all down, featuring also the fact that this turret is nearly impossible to penetrate, as it doesn't count as a weak spot for most of the time. If you are lucky enough to penetrate that area right there, why not? But it's so thin that most of the time people will not even bother. It's commonly known that the cupola of the Vk-91p is not a weak spot, and therefore not a lot of people will try to sneak a shot on it. Maybe a an Heavy-183 or something like that, but otherwise nobody will penetrate you. On top of that, you have a crazy hull as well. Just take a look at that, nearly 400mm of raw armor. You still have that weak spot, which is soon not to be a weak spot as long as you angle your tank correctly, because as you can see, you can climb up to nearly 300mm. Of course, it comes to a price, being easily penetrated on the side with gold shell, but in the end, if you angle it properly and people are not using gold shell, you are literally impenetrable. Now, there is one last thing to notice about the tank, and probably the most important one. When you take a look at the statistics directly into the game, it will tell you that it has 10 degrees of gun depression. Well, it's partially true, because at the front, as you can see, you have the hull that is blocking the gun depression. You only have 4 degrees. But if you place your tank on the side like that, here you can use your 10 degrees of gun depression, but you need to angle it. And the cool thing about needing to angle it is that right there, like that, it's the perfect angle for your tank to not get penetrated. As you can see here, it becomes literally impossible for your opponents to penetrate as long as they don't use gold shell. And this gives you those 10 degrees of gun depression plus a nice position. So with this tank, try to angle it like that pretty much all the time if your goal is to be able to use your gun depression in all down. But enough talk, let's see what this thing is capable of directly on the battlefield. To do that, as you can see, we are playing in a tier 10 game only, which is rare enough in my opinion to be mentioned. First of all, when you take a look at the VK and the position I'm gonna take, you see that I will play it aggressively, but not necessarily aggressively from a position that allows me to spot or anything like that, because I told you the lack of mobility doesn't allow you to do this. So instead, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to find a position from which I can still sink some shots, while at the same time only trying to show my turret. And to do this, you need to play aggressively, following the 60TP that has a way better mobility. Now, of course, people are gonna ask me, is it still worth it to get that tank in the current meta? And to those people, I'm gonna tell you yes, yes, yes. The Vk-91p is definitely a meta heavy, because unlike the others that got severely nerfed 2 or 3 updates ago with the whole nerf heavy updates, this one, as it's a collectible, did not get touched and will not get touched based on the fact that it was too expensive. Wargaming knows that they would have furious players if all of a sudden they decided to get rid of the current stats of the VK-91p. And this will help you quite a lot. Now, it still has one big downside. Here, unfortunately, I got penetrated because the VK in the back blocked me. But the thing is, when you try to push forward, as your turret is located at the back of the tank, if you really want to sneak those shots, you need to expose the whole tank, meaning that you will get penetrated. Luckily for you, you still have 2.7k hit points, which is enough to take one or two shots, a couple of shots before having to really care about your hit points. But still, it's frustrating sometimes thinking that if, for example, here I had Chieftain MK6, I wouldn't have taken the risk and probably wouldn't get penetrated. On top of that, when you angle the tank properly to get those 10 degrees of gun depression, you can get penetrated by other VK-91p because you have, when armored, something like 270 millimeters of artificial armor, whereas the VK has 275 millimeters of penetration. No, it's not a problem. We sneaked an HE straight on that grill. Unfortunately, he was using a spoil liner. Not a problem. We go in again, and I truly don't have a clue what happened here. Maybe a server delay or something, but we're not gonna bother. We don't care. We are gonna use the 60 TP in the second best thing to do with this tank, which is Sidescraping. You have a turret located in the back and one of the craziest armor, so just Sidescrape. Just take a look at that, what I did. Here, even if the grill could have probably tried to penetrate me directly in my lower part of the hull, he tried something. I don't know why he went for the tracks. Maybe he thought that he could penetrate. You can do that on the VK-91p. There are just a few tanks you can do it on. Maybe the VK-160-01p, the Martian, etc. But here you see that it's quite easy to bounce enemies when you are in all down, because you don't have any weak spots on the side, unlike a VK-7201K that has the rounded turret cheeks or even the rounded base of the turret that is easily penetrable. Here you don't have any weak spots, so that tank is best in Sidescrape, but if you don't have the possibility to do that, try to get it in all down, it should work as well. Now, of course, being on the city map is probably the best option for you. And if you're on a map that has some buildings on it, you definitely want to play on it. Just take a look at that, for example. As I have a crazy armor even on my back, I can't get penetrated by the hash coming from the AV-183. It's just one of the few tanks that allows you to do that. Usually you can't do that, and I would have get wrecked by the VK, by the AV, probably getting 1.3k damage already or something like that. And here I managed to bounce him twice. It's not something that will happen with a lot of tanks, trust me. Now, of course, the 121B invincible dies before we can do anything because, well, we have the mobility of a dead cow. But still, this tank is amazing, and I definitely advise you to get it. As you can see, 5k damage, a good amount of credits without using credit boosters. And even if this tank is not necessarily the one I would go for in order to get more credits, it's still quite an enjoyable one. And, well, if you like tier 10 and making credits, you combine both, you get the VK, and you're quite happy. Hopefully you enjoyed, guys. If that's the case, feel free to subscribe, like, and share. And before we end that video, you have two possibilities: getting the VK straight or trying the container. The container is always worth it because it's either you get the tank for a cheaper price or you get the gold for the exact amount of money that this gold is equal to. Well, it's kind of a juicy deal, and it would be a mess not to try it out. See ya.